Hello everyone. In this video we are going to cover texturing the shield. So we've already gone ahead and unwrapped it, and this is our UVs that we have. And here is what the mesh looks like with the UVs inside of our UV editor. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Photoshop, and I'm going to start to color in this object. Create a new layer, and I'm just going to go ahead and grab a brush, and I'm going to zoom in, and I'm just going to sort of shift click around this object. So here's one way to start this process. And I just went ahead and selected just a standard gray color. And make sure you're always creating everything on a new layer. Okay, so I'm going to go here. And make sure you don't bleed into any of the other UVs accidentally. What I'm using is a hard brush, 100%, size 25. And then I'm going to just go ahead and use my fill bucket tool. And just fill this in. Okay. After I finish filling this in, I'm going to go ahead and show you and to use the hand really quickly, I just press spacebar in Photoshop to scrub around my scene. Okay, so now what we can do here, I want to show you a couple cool little tricks. I'm going to duplicate this first just to show you, and I'm going to bring this as my top layer. From here I'm going to click, this is my blending mode. I'm going to go down my blending mode and go to screen, and what that allows me to do is see my UVs on top of my already colored image. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open, I already have some of these images here that I found, and I'm going to start with this metal, and I'm going to press open. I'm going to copy this, I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to paste it. And again, I know I've done this plenty of times with you. Control A, select all, Control C to copy, Control V to paste. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and rotate this around, and I'm just going to make this about that size. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to call this shield front, I guess. I don't know. And shield front detail. So now that I've got this here, I'm going to mess around with my blending mode a little bit. Multiply, we'll check. Multiply seems okay. Screen might be too bright. Yep. Overlay. Overlay is okay. So you see all that does is overlay directly over it. Another thing I want to do is I'm going to create clipping mask. This means it'll only affect this region. So now if I even go back to, what was I on screen, you'll see it only affects that part. Soft light. Soft light's okay. Let's try hard light, and I'm just looking for something that sort of looks kind of neat. Another thing I can do from this point, I can adjust the brightness of it. You could use legacy. I can make it darker and increase the contrast a bit. And I don't know. I'm not going for anything totally perfect, but that'll do for now. Now, in order, if you want to start to preview this as you're working on your mesh, I'm going to show you how to do that right now. Control-Shift-S. I'm going to save this as shield diffuse as a PSD file first. Then I'm also going to save it out as a TGA and turn off alpha channels and save. And click OK. And now back in Maya, I'm going to assign new material. I'm going to assign a blend. On this blend, I'm going to name it shield material. On the color, I'm going to start to see what it looks like. And I think that's kind of cool looking so far. And you see my UVs on there, which is neat. And if I click on it, it should be exactly where my my polygons are. And that's a pretty cool start. I kind of like the way that's starting to look. Now I'm going to push forward, and I'm going to go back into Photoshop, and I'm going to start a new. And I can also group these by folders. Shield front, because I can add so many details to just one section that might keep it a little bit easier to keep organized. So this time I'm going to do the crest, or the coat of arms, and I believe that's this section here. Yeah, it is. And I want to start by making it a slightly different color. Maybe I go with I want it to make it look more like a bronze in color to start. Let's see, that'll work. And go here. And then I'm just going to go ahead really quickly. If I do a fill color, again, it starts to widen this region. And I don't want to do that because I don't want to risk any colors bleeding into one another. So I just do this really quickly to avoid any possible bleeding into other colors. Now, I'm going to open my coat of arms. First I'm going to open this bronze design I found. I kind of just winged this by just selecting some textures I thought looked really cool, that might look nice on these. I think it looks better like that. And thought they'd just look cool how they are. So I'm going to go with that one, and then I'm going to design, bronze design, bronze detail. Coat of arms base. And then from here I'm going to locate this, Control A, Control C, Control Shift V. Oh, Control V. And there we go. Bring it smaller. Okay, and something like that. I think that might look cool. And then I can always mess around with some of these colors and so on and so forth. So if I wanted to adjust any coloration on this, I could brighten it, darken it, whatever. Also, same with this. Coat of arms crest. And maybe I want to let's see, hue, saturation, maybe saturate it just a little bit. It seems a little too sort of I want it to stand out, but not, let's see, no, not too much. I don't know. So I think that'll work. Alright. And then on here, maybe I want to make this a little bit darker. I can do a brightness contrast and bring down the brightness a little bit and maybe enhance the contrast a bit. Again, something like that maybe. Click OK. And then I'm just going to go ahead and see what this looks like. TGA. Save. Yes. OK. And I'm going to go back into Maya. And I'm going to go ahead and refresh or reload. And now you're starting to see the coat of arms on there. And the shield's really starting to get some cool, get a cool look to it. Now as for the rest of it, excuse me, I had to pull the microphone away from my face for that cough. I didn't want to make you deaf. I'm going to do the bolts next. I'm a little under the weather. I'm going to go here, and I'm going to again group this coat of arms. Okay, and there's that. Again, you can always pull this up over it. I also showed you projection texturing, so you could always project your textures onto your mesh also. And that's always another way to do this. For this one, on the bolts, I found this pretty cool little texture, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sort of start to select just certain ones. I'm going to make each one different. I'm just going to select a different one for each one. And this is where this really comes into helpfulness. Let me zoom in. And having the UV overlay right on top can be extremely helpful. And I'm going to go with that one. And then I'm going to locate a different one just so they all sort of have a different look to it. And I always like to name my layers. and I just pasted that in. Control T to resize. And enter. And I grabbed these textures from CG Textures, and I also grabbed one of the textures from Pixabay, the coat of arms I got from Pixabay. Okay. Control T. Okay, go with that. Oh, and I have more. Now once I have a couple varieties, I can go ahead and just kind of grab those bolts and sort of run with it. Control C, Control Shift V, or Control V, bolt 4. Control plus to zoom in. And texturing is such an important part of modeling. Sure, modeling can go a long way, but without textures, you're not going to get much further than that. Texturing is so important. You can make a bad model look good with good texturing, but you can't make a good model look good with bad texturing. I think I said that right. Typically, that's the experience that I've seen. No matter how good your model is, it always depends and relies on how well your texture actually is. Because with a poor texture, it doesn't really matter what the model or the mesh looks like, because it just doesn't look right with a poor texture on it. Okay. Alright, and again, this will be bolt 5. And I've got 3 more up here, and then I think I have like 2 or 4 down in the corner, I forget. Maybe 3, I don't remember. And I'm sort of just grabbing these kind of randomly. But I thought it would look cool for these particular bolts. Okay. And as I said, I'm just trying to get some variety out of these so they don't all look exactly the same. And here we go. And I'm going to go find another one. This one looks kind of cool. It's got some chips in it and things. And bring that over into place. And then I'm just going to resize it into place. And press enter. So I've got those so far, and now I'm going to get these other one's down here. Okay, now I'm going to figure out where this one came from. And it's this one. Okay. Bolt 8. I'll use that one down here. And I'm just going to resize it to fit. And in a second here, I'm gonna save anyway. But in a second here, I'm gonna go ahead and see what it looks like on the mesh. Right. Bring this over here. Resize. And enter. And one more. And I'll take this one right here. Excuse me. I had to cover the mic there for that. Go ahead over here. Resize. Alright. Now I'm going to save it. Alpha channel's off. Oop. Oop. Yes. Okay. I'm also going to save out the Photoshop file. I'm going to go back into Maya here and reload. Oh, and one other thing back in Photoshop, I forgot. I'm going to turn this off so I can see what it looks like. Alpha channel's off. Save. Yes. Okay. And back into Maya and reload. And I'm starting to see that I'm getting these cool little bolts on there. Just for the time being, I want to turn the specular. I'm going to turn the reflectivity all the way down. I'm going to bring this down and this down a bit because it's just a little tough to kind of get a good read on the texture. But I really like the way those bolts are starting to look. I think they look like some of them are pretty worn and weathered. This one looks like it has that little flat appearance. And they all sort of are very in type, so they're not all exactly the same bolt, which kind of makes it look not as real as it could when it's all the same exact one. So there's that, and then I've got these other portions I need to do, and we'll go ahead and do that here right now. Go back into Photoshop. I'm starting to really like the way it's starting to look. I think I could get sort of a better metal here in this section, but for now it'll work. And zoom out. This is the back piece. I believe this is the far outer piece, and this is the interior piece. So I'm going to go ahead. I can also group this. Call this bolts. Okay. And then I will grab another base sort of color. On these bolts, I could do all types of stuff. I could adjust really anything I want on it. Hue, saturation, brightness, so on and so forth. But I'm okay with how it looks right now. And now I'm going to go ahead and go back to my brush tool I'm going to create a new layer, and we'll go ahead and get started on this portion here. Excuse me. And this one will just be a standard sort of gray. And I'm going to turn this on because I want to make sure I'm not going to bleed into any other colors. Okay, and I'm going to do the inside. And I'm just holding shift as I click around. I know I already mentioned it, but just as a reminder. And now I'm going to go through using my brush tool. And go ahead, and there we go. Now I can also apply this metal to it, give it some of those scratchy sort of things. I think this is the interior rim. I'm going to call it interior rim base. Okay, and I'll go ahead and Control V and Control T and resize, and I don't know, that looks good. That looks like a good spot. I'm going to create a clipping mask so it only covers that region. I'll call this metal and run in maybe multiply or maybe an overlay, I don't know. No, not overlay, maybe soft light. I kind of like multiply the best. I'm going to go with multiply. And you can always try these other ones and see what looks best to you. And then I'm going to turn this off, and I'm going to press Control Shift S. Photoshop. I'm going to save this out as a TJ because I want to see what it looks like. Turn off my alpha channels and hit save. Okay. And now go back here. Reload. And you'll see I'm starting to get that texture on there. Excuse me. So, a really common thing, I'm not going to get into it because, you know, we're just kind of learning, but a really common thing is around these edges, like this one here, there's usually like some type of weathering or sort of aging kind of on it, where it's kind of like been roughed up a little bit. There's like scratches and things like that. And it's usually because it's scratched, it's lighter in color. So you can always run around and sort of do some kind of you could use some kind of cool brush. I'm sure there is something. Let me see if I can find anything that might be kind of cool. And it's just on normal, and I just want to sort of see what happens. And I actually want to also, I can't adjust the softness or hardness on it. I don't even know if these are by default in Photoshop. These could be some custom brushes I have. I'm not really sure. I don't remember. But even if so, this is probably a good one. And I'll do like screen or soft light. And then just sort of grab a brighter color. And I'm just sort of brushing right over the edges. And I just want to show you sort of the difference. I mean, I'm not going into too much detail here, and I'm using just a generic brush as I kind of rough over the edge here. It might look a little too sort of painted on, but just to give you an idea of what it might sort of and then alright, and I'll do it one more time around this side, and I'm just sort of just roughing in some possible edging from like wear and tear of this sort of being thrown around or something like that. I don't have a clue what it's going to look like. It might look just too sort of fake because I'm just painting it on really rough, but we'll see what turns out here. And I think that'll do. And let me turn this off. Sort of get this little weird little kind of look. Let's see if it does anything. Yes. Okay. And we'll go back into Maya and reload. You kind of get the idea of it. You kind of get this rough little, if you take more time and really put some effort into it, you can get some really cool looks to show that it's sort of got that sort of weathered sort of look, damaged look to it. And then excuse me, we have the last two sections here. I'm just going to throw on some type of metal to sort of I might just use the regular metal that I have just to wrap this up. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and grab a hard brush. 25 was a pretty decent size. And edging. We'll call this, and we'll create a group for this, or folder. Interior rim. New layer. And we'll call this exterior rim back, because it's going to be the rim in the back of it. And from here I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more, so okay. Now here, 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 and here. Press G, fill it in, and we're going to go around and around and around and just keep working this. Okay, and now go back to my metal and Control A, Control C, and Control V. And this time I'm just going to sort of overlay it over the entire thing because I kind of just want to wrap this up. Doesn't really matter if it's distorted or not. And enter. Create clipping mask so it'll only cover that region. And metal. And I do have some edging that I could do. I don't know if I'm going to get into it. And I'll make this multiply. Control Shift S. Save without alpha channels. Oh wait. TGA without alpha channels. Save. Okay. Okay. And back into Maya. Reload. And let me turn off my, here we go, TGA. Alpha channels off. Save. Yes. Okay. And now I'm going to go back into Maya here, and I'm going to reload it. And I really could probably use some of the weathering around the edges on that, but it's okay. I'm not going to worry about it right now. I'm pretty pleased with the outcome of it. I think it looks okay. It's a little weird, but you know, you get the idea. You can really do any type of texture on there. Now the other thing we're going to cover is we're going to create a normal map as well. And we already know how to do that from our previous lab. And this should really sort of bump up some of those the depth should really be very well apparent in this one. One of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to just highlight all of these. I'm going to create, duplicate them, and then I'm going to copy them all onto one layer. Okay, so that's going to be my normal map. And then I'm going to go Filter, 3D, Generate Normal Map. Okay. So again, you can see a preview here. You can see some of the really high end detail in here. And I'm going to keep everything as is. I'm just going to press OK. And you can start to see the normal sort of textures in here. Especially in the coat of arms segment here. I'm sorry, excuse me. And now what I'm going to do is File, Save As, a TGA, and this is going to be Shield Normal. Okay, and before I do that, I'm going to save it one more time as a TGA to make sure alpha channel's off. Shield Normal. And yes, make sure that alpha channels button is off. Now, go back into Maya, select my mesh, go to bump mapping, select my file, change this from use as bump to tangent space normals, go to File 2, open, Shield Normal, open, and we should see, you can see pretty good depth here on the coat of arms segment here. You can kind of see that change in in appearance. Now the next thing I'm going to do is, and you can even see it in here, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to assign a specular map to it, and I'm going to go back into Photoshop, and I'm going to highlight all these, bring them onto a new layer, and I'm going to press Control E. That merges them all down, like merge down in projection layering. And then from here, this will be specular map, and I'm going to do image adjustments. We'll do black and white, and let's see if I do auto, if that does anything. That's fine. I'm okay with it. And then I'm going to save this out and call it specular. And if you watched the other video about specular maps in the previous lab, you'll know that there's tons more that you can do with spec maps. So I'm going to turn off alpha channels and press save. Okay. And then I'm going to save this out as my Photoshop file, and I'm just going to call it material. Okay. And now, back in my Maya file, I'm going to go to my specular color, and I'm going to go to File, Open, and Shield. Oh, looks like I didn't save it as a TGA file. Shield. Specular. Save. Okay. And now I'm going to assign that shield specular. Open. And you should see some changes in the shine of it. And you can also go back in here, and although that the specular color is on there, it should start, you can play around with some of the settings, it should start to mess around with it a little bit more. Anyway, there is our shield. So, and let's turn off the grid. So now we have this shield that we've now modeled, textured, unwrapped, applied a diffuse texture, applied a specular, and a normal map too. So we are well on our way on completing the interior medieval times room here. If you have any questions, be sure to inbox me. I know this was a longer lab, but it's very important, and I hope you enjoyed watching this. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next video.